Usatine Media presents the Evidence-Based Physical Diagnosis app by Stephen McGee, and this app will allow you to practice evidence-based medicine with all the data that you need, with the calculators to allow you to use things like pretest probabilities and likelihood ratios to be able to make diagnoses and to understand how accurate your diagnosis will be based on the kinds of physical findings that you would encounter in medical practice. This can be used by medical students learning the science of evidence-based medicine. It can be used by residents in practice and practicing physicians. If you want to see how we can use this app, let's say we are looking at jaundice. We can go into the chapter, we can learn about jaundice itself, and then we can learn what are the findings like scleral icterus and other associated findings. And then from here, once you have an idea of the various findings, you might want to actually go and look at the actual calculator, which would be clicking on EPM calculator. Now let's say we change gears a bit here and we go and we look at an ankle fracture and we say, okay, well, someone walks in, they've hurt their ankle, and what is the likelihood that they have the ankle fracture just walking into your emergency room or urgent care or practice, or whether it's primary care or orthopedics? Quite what we see is that the likelihood at the beginning, before you do any tests, that probability is 12%. The range in the literature would be 9 to 16%, but we're going to set it at the median, and that makes it easy to start off with. And now we're going to decide, well, what are the different tests that you might do to help you know whether there is a fracture. Well, let's say that they have, you're doing your Ottawa ankle rules, you notice that they are tender at the posterior medial malleolus, and you want to know, well, what is the likelihood that you're actually detecting an ankle fracture with this tenderness? So you click on this button here. The likelihood ratio itself is 4.8, but what this is going to do is take the pretest probability, combine it with the likelihood ratio, and tell you now that the likelihood post-test, and the test being that tenderness, is basically now up to 40%. So that can help you now. That helps you sort of increase the likelihood. Now, if you look at the quickset, there's certain things like you find that the Ottawa ankle rules are completely negative, and they're negative against an ankle fracture itself. So let's say you do this, and now it goes from 12% down to 1%. So you can feel comfortable sending someone out of the emergency room without x-rays when their Ottawa ankle rules are totally negative. 1% is so rare that you're not going to do x-ray everyone with a 1% probability. So that's how you use it in actual practice. Let's look at the app further. Let's see how you would see that the contents are organized. There are many chapters. We won't go through all the chapters here, but they're organized by things such as vital signs, and then from head and neck all the way down to other organ systems, pulmonary, heart, cardiac, everything you would expect is here. So let's say we're looking at someone who, let's pick one. How about someone with a diabetic foot? We want to learn more about the diabetic foot, and we want to know something about how good is the monofilament for diabetic neuropathy. These are things that you can learn about, and issues with regards to the Charcot's joint. You can jump around inside a chapter to look for different findings, like probability of osteomyelitis, and there's a test called the probe test. So there are all these different ways to do this. You can look at an EBM ruler. This is using the monofilament, and you can double click it to be able to see it more clearly, of course, um, on an iPad or a larger view of this other than an iPhone. You'd be able to see this clearly, although you can see it quite clearly. All you just needed to do was to increase the size. So this tells you about the different tests and the probabilities. And if you were doing this on the ruler now, or the actual calculator, go from the ruler to the calculator. The calculator really is the easiest way to run these things. You could go down to here. Let's see if we go to our diabetic foot here. Here we go. We're talking about diabetic foot osteomyelitis. So now, I guess once you're thinking that they may have osteomyelitis, their pretest probability is quite high. But you could go ahead and see what happens when you do some tests. Let's say you find that the ulcer area is greater than 5 centimeters squared. That's quite a large ulcer. Once the ulcer has gotten that large, then it takes up, 95% likelihood that you're now dealing with osteomyelitis just based on the size of the ulcer itself. And that's interesting to know. The other thing is if your probe test is negative, now you look at what happens. It goes down to 27%. Certainly not even as low as 1%, but it decreases your probability in a way that's helpful to know. So those are some of the things that you can do. Now the other thing is that you may find that certain areas are helpful in your practice more than other areas, and so you could decide to put some bookmarks here. Like I put a bookmark earlier for jaundice, and so if you go to this bookmark, it takes you right to the jaundice chapter, so it's a quick way to navigate. You could also bookmark an image. We looked at the auto ankle rules earlier. Here's the actual image for auto ankle rules, and we can see how it shows. Here's that bony tenderness along the malleolus on either side, whether you're looking at lateral or medial, and we bookmark that figure. So if you want to use that to remember your auto ankle rules, that's a great way to do that. The other thing you can do is you can bookmark a table. So here we have an EBM ruler for anemia, and it tells you a little bit about like palmar pallor, what is the value of conjunctival rim pallor, and it gives you of course, the higher the number, the more it changes probability, and same thing on the decrease side. So this is things that we can bookmark for going back to the things that you like to do. You can make notes. I just made a simple note saying that the Jaundice chapter was a good chapter, but you may want to make a note that's more meaningful than that. They also can do searches. So let's say you want to know more about the ankle. This was a previous search, so all I got to do is click it, and it's going to give me areas where I can find out more about the ankle in the text, in the images, and in the tables. All this stuff is easy to find. Let's say we're going to pick something else. Maybe we're looking at something like gallstones. So let's see. We could try gallstones like this. And there we go, gallstones or gallstone, either way. And now we can get information. And sometimes there won't be an image or a table, but there may be plenty of text about here's palpation and percussion of the abdomen, and telling us about the use of gallstones. Of course, you could also decide that you want to do your search differently. Maybe you want to look at cholecystitis, not specifically. Here's cholecystectomy. I want to learn about that. Let's see, here's cholecystectomy, the removal of the gallbladder. But so there's so many different ways that you can navigate this. We can go at any point right back to the EBM calculator. We could, let's say we want to look at an Achilles tendon tear. So here, if we start off, if you think the Achilles tendon is torn before you even do a test, you have a very high pretest probability. But let's say you do the calf squeeze test and it's totally negative. Wow, let's see what that does. That knocks that down from 78 to 15%. It's a pretty good test, the calf squeeze test. So these are ways that you can use this book. Just to know more about when I say book, I'm talking about the app. And the app is so much more powerful than a book, because a book, you don't have the calculators like this. You can see the material, but the calculator, you would need to go online and try and find this online, whereas this way you've got it all here in front of you in your hand at the point of care. This is you can give feedback to this book. You can learn about the author. You can see that this was developed by Usatine Media. I'm Dr. Usatine, and Peter Erickson is our software developer. And together we've put this app together for you so that you may practice evidence-based medicine. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this preview of this app, and I hope you'll find this useful in your practice. Thank you.